I'm talking with Vincent Brathwaite, CEO and co-founder of Gidens, an AI-powered back office solution helping small businesses automate the busy work so they can focus on what they love. Vincent's a Caribbean American design leader, educator, and speaker who's spent the last 20 years using design to transform communities and empower entrepreneurs. In our conversation, we'll talk about how Vincent's values of empathy and integrity guide his work and what it really takes to build technology that empowers people rather than replaces them. I want to welcome Vincent. I'm kind of curious, what was your inspiration for starting Guidance?
Thank you, Brody, for having me. So I love this question. For me, it all began in 2009. So I had just quit my 9 to 5 to run my own design consultancy in Atlanta. And I was confident that I could run this and it would be successful because I'd been building brands and websites for entrepreneurs for years prior to this. And I thought that running a business full time would just mean more freedom, right? Like that's why people start businesses, I believe. But the truth is that I was presented with more chaos. And so this was paperwork, this was permits, these were compliances, invoices, RFPs, taxes, all of the things. And that invisible stuff that no one tells or told me about, when starting a business. And so I kept it going for years, and I was able to work with some incredible people, small business owners, nonprofits, enterprise clients, people really trying to make a difference. But in 2017, this is when everything sort of came to a halt for me, and I hit a wall. Ultimately, what happened is that I was burnt out, like completely burnt out. And I realized that what I had been doing is everything except the thing that brought me joy, which was design and strategy and really connecting with these incredible people. And the very craft that once made me feel alive now sat buried under these contracts and these spreadsheets. And I didn't want to give up on design. It was really what I spent my life's work doing, but it had to look different. And I didn't want to spend my days managing logistics, and I wanted to spend more time creating more impact alongside of these people that were pursuing their dreams and their passions. Guidance was inspired by this journey, and it was inspired by these questions that I asked, which is, why do small business owners not have enough money to stay afloat? Why aren't they making more of an impact with the products and the services that they are providing? Why aren't they marketing more consistently? Why aren't they growing? Why aren't they experimenting? Why aren't they scaling? And what I learned is that by asking those questions, the why wasn't because they were tired. The why was because of all of the other work and the things that they had to do that wasn't bringing them joy, that wasn't aligned with why they originally started their business. And they went back to what I had experienced in my own business, which was this overwhelming feeling and responsibility around administration and paperwork. And so their failing was from an operational overload. They were wearing way too many hats as a founder, as the accountant, as the marketer, as the compliance officer. And so for me, this was the impetus to kickstart and leverage all of what I had experienced from working as a small business owner, but also being someone who's a designer in tech as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked within, larger tech companies to be able to help streamline workflows for teams. I was once the manager of a 4,500 design community. And so in doing that, I had to create streamlined and workflows that would support those individuals and the jobs that to be done for their organizations. And so I just leveraged all of that experience and said, let me resurface this problem that I experienced, and that many small business owners, not just the ones that I work with, but others are also experienced. And there's a stat that is presented by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, where 43% of small business owners spend over 6 hours a week on administrative tasks, and 22% say they miss growth opportunities because of it. So this is a significant amount of time being wasted uh, for small business owners. And so again, this for me was a problem that I couldn't ignore,
Mhm.
and I was very intimately connected with, and that was the driver for guidance.
That's awesome, actually. I like that, like, it was the idea of like going into business on your own, and then rather I appreciate the fact that you didn't like give up on the dream of going into business. You know what I mean? Like, because I feel like having been on this journey of being like a founder for like the last, I have only been doing this maybe for like the last 6 months now for myself. I've already definitely hit walls where I'm like, is this the right decision
Yeah,
for us to be making? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
so I love that. I love that rather than just like throwing in the towel and going back to corporate. Like, it was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna figure out how to make it work. Because
yeah,
it's funny because we talk about that, like going into the jobs because we're passionate about this stuff,
yeah,
and then getting bogged down with like the things that you have to do and losing the passion. So it's like, um, did you find that over time as you built guidance, like you like uncovered that passion again, or like did you create those opportunities for yourself in guidance where you're like, you know what, this is why I want to do the company, this is, I'm trying to get back to that again, and then so it's like the activities that I engage in are going to be this, and then like I'll try and delegate things, you know what I mean? Like, is that
yeah,
kind of like how?
yeah. So when it comes to my passion, right? I am passionate about complex, boring things. As a creative, it may sound strange for me to say that, um, but that's exciting for me, right? And so when talking about what was sort of like where the passion was and how did I find it, or how did I activate it? Really, it was always there for me, through this work of the hidden, or
Mm.
the uh, the overlooked problems, right? And for me, that is where a lot of the magic lies.
Like, it's kind of like you could, it's like you could kind of see it in the on the side, like in the peripheral, and you're like, you know what, this is a problem we need to fix, kind of deal,
Yeah,
right? Because it's interesting to think about it that like it's for you like living through the problem and then tackling it and then realizing, man, there's just a bunch of people who just like deal with it,
yeah, yeah,
you know?
absolutely, it is. And it's not something that people, specifically entrepreneurs and small business owners, would articulate. They're not going, if you ask them, what's hurting your business, they're probably not going to say it's because of paperwork. That's probably not going to
I
be
see what you're saying.
their response, right? It's going to be other things that are a result of being overwhelmed by the paperwork. It's going to be because they don't have enough customers, or the money isn't flowing as well. But again, for me, it was peeling back the layers and asking, well, why is
Right.
that the case? And yeah, so it's something that not only is overlooked by maybe from people from the outside looking in, but it's also something that's overlooked from people who are actually within the business themselves and not able to see it. Because what I've also learned too is that when small business owners or entrepreneurs are met with a challenge and there is a time constraint in terms of, like, having to make a certain amount of money so you can pay your rent, so you can pay your bill,
Yeah.
like, those are very real things, right? You don't really have the luxury of trying to explore many different options. You just figure it out and you keep it pushing. And once you do that enough, the problem that was once there no longer really seems like a problem, although it still is, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Having to manually fill out a lot of paperwork is still actually eating up time. But because the entrepreneur, the small business owner has found a way to just figure it out, it's not really on top of mind until it gets removed, right? So
That makes a lot of sense. I think it's I like it when there's like a connection between the product and what it's trying to solve and the people that are building it, and you're obviously very passionate about it. And I kind of want to get into like how guidance works and like like what it actually what the product is, but before we go there, I'm curious like if you have any stories that you want to share from like the people that you work with, you know what I mean, the impact that it's made on companies, like because I'm sure like people have come back to you and been like, thank you like for giving
Yeah,
me time back, or like thank you for unlocking this thing, because like that's how you felt, I'm sure. Like how did
yeah.
that feel to like see that happen for other people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good feeling. There is one of our customers who has used the product and came back to me. She is a small business owner who's local here, and she's also a mom, a wife. She has a whole entire family, and she had the support of her family to help her run this business. And this business is within the food and restaurant space. It's a more of a packaged goods. And one of the things that she has to do, because she does not have a brick and mortar business, nor does she has a food truck, a lot of her business comes from attending local markets, right, or events.
Mm,
And
right.
so where she has her booth and she's able to, share her product and sell it. And just like with her, there are many others who also don't have a brick and mortar. And even those who do, they also are participating in these events. But for her, as you can imagine, being a mother and also being a business owner, there are a lot of tasks that has to happen, right? Both in the business and as a family, a family person. And for her, by using our product, she was able to s- actually have time to spend more with her family. And I know that sounds like, cliche, and that's part of what we talk about, but it's very true, because with the farmers markets and any event that any of these business owners go to, specifically in the food and restaurant space, they have to fill out a special events permit. And this special events permit is something that is still very manual. So what that means is that a what she has had to do is she would have to download this PDF, fill it out manually. She'd also have to draw a diagram of her booth. She's not a designer, she's not an artist. Very rarely are business owners have that skill set. But anyhow, she had to do this. And on top of that, she would have to drive to the Department of Health and Sanitation branch to drop it off and to pay for it. She lives about 40 minutes away from the Department of Health one way. So, as you can imagine, again, as a mother of young children, yes, she has the help of her husband, but also being able have to coordinate the time that it would take to both, get everyone settled, then to have to drive over to the Department of Health, wait in line, and then drive back to be able to, keep business moving and keep things going. So she didn't have to do that anymore. So because we've automated that and we've made it we digitized that process, she could submit her form at night when she has some time to herself, and then she was able to still get a response back and get approved without having to interrupt her schedule or her day with both the business and the family. And so for her, she was excited and very appreciative of being able to have that time back, and she expressed that with us. And for me, that felt great because we were doing the thing that we'd set out to do, and
Awesome.
hoping to do that with many more people.
Did you have to did you on the, I guess like on the logistics side, I'm curious, not like that's super awesome, and like now the engineer brain in me has questions based off of your story. Because like I'm curious, I am curious about how guidance works in general, like if I was a small business, how like what does it do for me, like who's the best client for it kind of deal. But did you to get rid of like the manual step of because like I'm from Hawaii, I understand dealing
Mhm.
with state and all that other stuff there. So it's
Yeah.
like deal like because there we're still like in the 90s there
Mhm.
80s and stuff, right? You walk into some of those offices and you're like, oh, is that a fax machine? And it's
Right.
like, oh, that's crazy.
And it works,
So
and they're using it, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I had to go get a form at one point or get something done from like the hospital, and I went to the hospital and they're like, no, you got to go to this other department, and then I went there and they're like, they gave me the form and they're like, okay, now you got to go to this other department and turn the form in there, and I
Yeah.
was like, what is this? Like, it's just like, is there a website? Like, what's going
Right,
on?
right.
Right. So I'm kind of curious, like, did you have to work with them to digitize that, or did they have something and like like, it's just like hidden kind of deal, like it's new?
Yeah, so it's a combination. So I'll say this, that we're still working with them, right? In this process. Yes, they do have a digital version of this, but many people aren't aware of. And so being able to collaborate with them and still have conversations with them about the process is something that we are still doing, because we want to not only make it really useful for the small business owner, but we also want to make sure that our platform is useful for them as well, because it will help to alleviate the sort of repetitiveness of having to approve and or review a lot of these documents that come in, and also making more room for many more people to even submit. So yes, so that's an ongoing conversation. That's an ongoing working relationship. And yes, it's a combination of both. There is a digital platform that they had built, and it's still, in some regards, it's still in existence, but many people don't know about it because of how the communication channels work from the process, without getting too much into the weeds. But yeah, we're still working with them. Yeah.
That makes sense. And like even in a place like Hawaii too, I feel like even if people knew about the digital process, it's still kind of old school there, right? Like a lot of folks would rather talk to somebody in person or just have it taken care of kind of deal. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yeah,
Right. Yeah. Because one of the other things, as far as technically speaking, is that the drawing that is required on this form is still not integrated in their version, but it's integrated in ours, meaning we've leveraged
interesting.
AI to be able to create a visual uh, for a business owner based on what they're going to have in their booth, versus them having to go to pen and paper and draw this out.
Draw something. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like now I'm curious. Like, can you tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more about like the workflow, I guess, or like guidance as a product in general?
Yeah, so um, we started with one particular form, and that's this special events permit. The goal is to automate and streamline the processes for the many forms that small business owners in this particular space have to engage with, and that's upwards of 42. There's about 42 different forms that all have their own sort of system. Some are manual, some aren't. So anyway, the goal is to get there, but we started with this one. And what we've done with this one form is, one, we've taken the information that is both on the digital version that they have, but also the manual version, and we've streamlined it in such a way where a small business owner doesn't necessarily have to input their business information every time, which is what they would have to do right now. So what they're able to do on our platform is that they can go to their business profile page, add all of their information about their business. And because we're catering to food and restaurant businesses, we've also included some fields that are unique to those individuals, like your menu items and the type of food that you're going to serve, or that you just have within your wheelhouse, let's say. And so from that page or that form that they fill out, they will go to the special events permit dashboard, and there's a button that allows for them to uh, fill out or autofill the special
Oh,
event.
nice.
So what it does is it takes all of that information, fills out the necessary fields uh, on that form, so that the small business owner can review it. They can make any adjustments, and again, with the booth diagram that they have to submit, they would just need to click on the different components that they are going to have in their booth. And what we've done with that particular area is that we've pulled together an aggregate of all the different required elements within the booth, as well as what some booth
Oh, okay.
owners would have. So there is a list in which they can choose from based on the research that we've had with speaking with folks over at the Department of Health about what is required in order for them to get their approval. So again, all they would need to do is select the different
Like the different
elements,
piece.
and it will place it in its specific location, because that's another component to the diagram, is that it's not just about drawing out what is going to be there. It's also about being considered about where these things exist, like where's the wash station versus where's the electrical versus where is the serving table. All of those things have to be considered in a way that it doesn't interrupt the flow and it doesn't cause any problems. And that's what they're looking for as well. So again, a small business owner doesn't even have to think about that because we've already done that work for them. And so they're just selecting the things and it's placing it where it needs to go. The other part, which is really exciting and really helps to save a lot of time, is that on our platform, once one of these forms is completed and submitted, if they have another event that they want to go to or be a vendor at, instead of having to pull up another blank form, there is a duplicate on the existing form that they had already submitted. And once they hit duplicate, it will generate a new form ready to be submitted with similar information. So all they would need to do is just change out the title of the event. But if they're going to be serving the same food, if they're going to have the same setup, they don't have to do that anymore. They're just
They can
changing the
just copy
name,
the form.
right, and just changing the name, changing the date and the location, and then submit. And so the most time that they would spend is in the initial form that they complete. Every other form that they do after that is probably going to be under 60 seconds, because all they're changing out is just the simple information that is unique to that event. So that's how this works. There's also a few other features based on conversations that we've had with small business owners about once they do arrive to the event, they oftentimes have to be reminded of what they need to bring, right? As you can imagine, as a small business owner, there's a lot that you're already thinking about. And so what we've done is we've embedded a checklist that pulls from the information from their form and creates that automatically for them. So they can just print it out and take it with them, or they could be, because of the platform, they can just open up their phone and look at and check off what the things that they need and add more things to that checklist if they need to. So again, we really considered this entire flow of how someone is able to identify an event that they want to participate in, go through the process of making sure that they are compliant to be a part of that event, and then also equipping them with the tools so that they can feel confident when they arrive and show up, that they have everything that they need, so that they can continue to do the next one and continue to grow and build it that way.
That's kind of cool. I like that. I like the I like that it's immediately like clear how it kind of lets them focus more on like the reason that they started the business, right? Like it's like, hey, because half these people, they probably started the business because they like cooking what they're cooking or making what they're making, right? Like that's what they
Right.
want to do is make the food, right?
Right.
So like, and I can just only imagine like getting set up and being like, oh, I forgot this piece of paperwork, or I forgot this thing that I was supposed to have like and post or something
Right.
like that. So like that's super cool. Uh, I'm kind of curious too to see if you guys end up with, or if you have metrics around how much how much easier it is to get approved, I guess, with the system. Because I can only imagine too, like if I had to like draw, like, so I used to cater back in the day with my friend,
Okay.
um, but it was very much like a, oh hey, my friend's getting married, we're gonna go cater for their wedding kind of deal. Like we
Yeah.
didn't get permits or anything that we probably should have, you know what I mean? Like so like I could only imagine how often we would have gotten rejected if we had to like draw diagrams and then go, and then they would have been like, this is wrong. You got to move here. You got to do this way. So like the fact that as a new business, let's say onboarding, that's never done it. If they used your system, they wouldn't have to worry, right, about that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
like that's kind of that's super cool. I like how it's working on I like that it's creating like a streamline on like the state side, but then also like the administrative side on them for them, but then also like it's just immediate value for the
Yeah.
business owner, right?
Absolutely. It's something that we are, and which is why I said we are, still working with them to, we want to understand what that might look like in terms of comparison, right?
Hmm.
So that's going to take some time to see, but we're really curious about that as well.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, now I have a hard question for you.
Okay.
So, as an AI application founder
Hmm.
and somebody who's obviously invested in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and what's happening there, um, I'm sure you're aware that everyone's terrified, like on the creative and engineering side. There's a
Yeah.
lot of there's it's I mean, not everybody, right? It's back and forth. Like there's a lot of fear and excitement, right? And for all the good reasons, I think. But you're also an educator and a mentor, and I'm kind of curious the stuff like as a educator and a mentor, how are you, have you had to change any of your message, or like any of like that's like, you know, any of the conversations, have they changed? Like are people more worried with AI, or you know what I mean, that kind of stuff? I'm kind of curious like how you're, because
Yeah.
you obviously see the value in it, but then also
Mhm.
like it's not like you're thinking like I'm not going to hire, you know what I mean, like it's
Yeah.
not trying to, you know, that kind of deal, right?
Yeah. So yes, there, to your point, Brody, there is a lot of fear around AI from the standpoint of, is AI going to uh, take a job away from me? And uh, where do I fit in the workspace, in the work force, right? And what I share with my students, that these are grad students, so these are individuals who probably have had some experience working and in the industry. Not everyone, but some of them have. And I share with them that, the truth is AI isn't really here to erase us. If anything, I believe and see it that it is a way to reveal us and amplify our abilities. You know, what it's doing is that it's helping us to think about what makes us human, which are the things that are the attributes of around creativity and empathy and judgment and meaning, right? It's forcing us essentially to ask ourselves, what can we do as human beings that machines can't do? And how can we use the technology to amplify, not diminish those abilities, right? Because there are some advantages that we have that aren't really talked about as much when we have this conversation about AI and the workforce and jobs, etc. But one of the advantages that we have as human beings is that we have a level of awareness, right? We perceive emotion, we interpret nuances, and we help to bring context to situations and circumstances that we may find ourselves in. AI is really great, as we know, at analyzing data, but it can't discern intention, right? It can't generate its own language, but it 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 can generate language based on data, but it doesn't understand tone, right? It can't imitate empathy, um, and it can feel, and that's our advantage, our human operating system, so to speak, where we run on skills that often matter and are mission critical. So these things include, say, curiosity, right? That
Hmm.
humanistic part of ourselves is something that can be amplified and encouraged with the technology. The courage to be able to ask questions like why, as I shared before, what was the driving force of guidance is my curiosity of why businesses weren't operating in the best way that they could and why people weren't experiencing freedom in their own business. Uh, why was the driving motivation factor for me? And I think it will continue to be the case for other people instead of asking how fast. Critical thinking, seeing the system behind the surface. I've shared with my students that they're being asked to now be more critical about how they approach problem solving, right? They have the tools to be able to execute, but now they have to really take a step back and ask, well, what are the key considerations that a user needs when designing a system, right? And really thinking about those behaviors, uh, really tapping into empathy. I know that word is used oftentimes a lot, but it is something that is very real and that it does set us apart from the technology. Designing and deciding with people in mind and at the forefront. Ethical awareness, considering consequences before convenience, right? That is something that we also have that is that separates us from AI. And the last skill that I would say is important. And something that we do as human beings is adaptability. So that's learning, unlearning, and involving in real time, right? Because
Hmm.
again, there is a sensibility around awareness that we have that allowed us to be able to navigate the world um, for hundreds and thousands of years, right? And so that's never going to change and go away. And so, despite the amount of you know uh, concern that there is around AI, being able to tap into again just some of those skills is something that's going to help us s- stay in the game, leverage the technology in a way that supports us and really help to create some really fantastic and phenomenal solutions to problems that we are facing every day.
I like that. I think too, like right now, companies are trying to figure out how to get it all integrated. So we're seeing what we're seeing today, right? And then eventually, once they figure it out, they're going to do the same thing that they did. They're going to want to scale it because every company is just going to want to make more money. So there's going to be jobs again, right? Um, and but I think like going back to what you're saying, it's something that I've heard before about AI that I actually like. I love the argument because I think like at its base it's like the purest reason for wanting to push this type of technology is the idea that it lets us do it lets us be it's interesting because the idea is that with AI we can bring more humanity back to technology because if we have AI generating all of the stuff that's generative, like the stuff that we spend hours on creating, right? Because it takes us that long and it can do it really quickly. We can just kind of guide it and like create at that point, right? Like we can use like our brains to like just kind of guide the machine more or less. And it's like, oh hey, as like a founder, it's like with this type of tooling, it's like I can iterate through like 30 different versions of my idea in a couple days versus, months now, right? So it's interesting and it's fun. So and as an engineer, I'm definitely on board with all the tools and stuff. And I guess like I'm glad to hear that at least somewhere that's the kind of like message coming out.
Yeah,
Because honestly, like that's the feel that we should have. Like something that I've been telling like some of the junior engineers is that we got to look at it just like another tool. It's another technology, another tool, for doing our jobs, right? Like, and if you master it, you'll be just like everything else. As long as you stay ahead of the tech, you'll be okay.
yeah,
So.
absolutely. Another thing that I've shared with my students is the need to understand the vocabulary within within the design industry, because that's who my students are. They're designers, right? And so by understanding and having a really strong grasp of the vocabulary that's used to be able to um, design really great experiences, to be able to pull together interface that has interactions that are useful and that are delightful and that are pulling from research. They have to know, uh, you know, have a really strong understanding of, like, for what is a modal window, or being able to talk about uh, things like the contrast between certain text sizes, or things like that. That really does help and support the expectations that a user will have, because I'm constantly using the technology, and what I have found in my own practice is that it it is helpful because I have a strong understanding of what it is that I want to see happen. And so I'm
Mhm.
able to use vocabulary to help instruct it to get it to that goal that I want to see. If you don't have that language available to you, then you actually could be spending much more time trying to make something happen with using the technology. And this kind of goes back to the value of prompting, right?
Mhm.
If you're not able to create a good prompt, especially if you're using one of the LLMs, then your output is not going to be as great, or you're not going to see something that you were hoping to see,
To
right?
see, right.
From your engagement with it. And so the same is true, and it goes back to, so you shouldn't abandon. If I tell my students, it's not abandoning your role within design, because there are some really fantastic tools that can produce outputs that you would usually spend weeks or months doing. But it's now being able to go back into what what language, what systems, what are the what's the understanding from what you know about people, what you know about how they think, what you know about um, what they expect, and how can you translate that and inform that into the technology in such a way that's going to produce um, a result that you will that's going to be helpful for the end user, right? Because it's still, as you and I know, the technology, specifically AI, is still in its early stages. It does some amazing things right
Yeah.
now, but we're still in the early stages of what it does, and so it's going to get some things wrong, and it still needs help um, in how the output shows up. And so, yeah, again, it's really about empowering. For me, it's about empowering my students to know that they still have a place, and to
Mhm.
know that what they are learning and how they are approaching their work from a place of curiosity and asking questions, but then also diving into what makes great experiences great, from this, you know, design principles and human psychology merge. That having an understanding of that is really going to be more valuable than it has been before, because no longer is it really about whether or not a designer can, output uh, a nice web page, right?
Mhm.
Because there's a bunch of tools right now that can do that, right? But it's more so about, does this web page actually solve a real problem for the person who's engaging with it? That's the question
Exactly.
that has to be answered by designers right now.
That makes a lot of sense because a lot of times it's really easy, especially for somebody who's not familiar with like UX or design systems like stuff, to see something and just go like, "That's really pretty," or you know what I mean, or like, "It looks
Yeah,
nice." And a lot of times it's just the bells and whistles, and then you dig into it, it's like, "Oh, this is not functional at all." Um,
right,
so it's like
right.
I'm kind of interested there. Like, you made some really good points about just like like going back to like the importance of the that the LLM, the GPTs, they can't do anything if you don't feed it good input, right? So I'm kind of curious, like that comes for you, that comes from your experience and like being in industry and some of that stuff.
Yeah,
Um, with the new tooling, some of the students that are going to graduate and go in the industry, they're at least in engineering side, I know that they'll lose a little bit of the exposure to some of those conversations and some of those things. How do you think like the junior level, like the entry level folks coming in now, like I guess what do you would you like kind of advice would you give them? I guess like from a design point of view, like, if anything, uh
yeah,
to I guess you know what I mean, like get to the
yeah,
point where it's like, how do I build that skill then so that I can be good at it? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
yeah.
This is a time, I would say, to junior designers. This is a time for them to become really familiar with um, some of the tools that are out there. And I say some and not all because it's impossible to be familiar with all. There's just there's just too many. Um, but really understanding, how that tool works, but how they are able to use it to amplify what they're really good at, right? Because we all have a very unique gift. And that's maybe how we interpret information. That's probably how we are able to create or pull things together, pull pieces of information together, how we're able to create an emotional connection with a person based on how we use design principles. There are just so many different things that a person brings to the table that is unique to them based on their experiences, based on how they view the world, etc. And so for a junior designer, it's really about, what are the tools that helps to demonstrate that for them, and then becoming really familiar and really good at using it, or at being able to navigate it, or talk about it, I should say, and letting that be the way in which they find their footing within the industry, right? Because something that you mentioned earlier is, companies wanting to, implement and use AI and then scaling, right? And then they're going to hire more people to help them do that, right? And so it's going to be the people who have that experience of experimenting, exploring, and questioning the tool that they're using, that these individuals or these companies are going to be looking at. And these junior designers will be the ones, if they take on this responsibility and operate in this way, that they will rise from the group. And those who don't, they won't really stand out as much, right? Because before, junior designers were hired to do what a lot of these AI tools are doing right now, which is focusing on just the output. But that's being covered right now. So now it's, how do you manage the tool that's doing the output that you were once being hired to do? The repetitive, okay, we need to adjust this interface to match these changes, right? And so we have those tools to do that. So now it's being able to say, well, who can help make sure that this tool does it correctly, and that it does it, there aren't any hallucinations that take place. right?
Right. It's like one of those things, and because of the way that LLMs work and the way that all of this works, at least now in its current form, right? Like you need that kind of guardrail before it goes out, just to make sure, that nothing happened, right?
Right.
What I wanted to ask you is like the values and like the kind of characteristics that you look for when you're hiring, and like what do you think is going to be important, like as you staff up? Because right now you're small and you're building, right? And it's kind of like what do you think about as you, because like everybody you bring in is super important at that point. So it's like
Yeah.
what do you think about as you're building your team?
Yeah. So for me, um, to answer this question, I also want to look at it from a macro lens, and in what I'm building for my company in terms of the team is something that I want to see happening in the industry as a whole, and that is a culture of empathy and integrity, right? And so when I'm looking for people, I am looking for people first and foremost. Who are you as a person? Right? I think that that's extremely critical and important, especially when we're leveraging a technology that is simply just an extension of who we already are, right? And so,
Mm,
if I can bring in individuals who operate with a level of, at minimum, a level of empathy for people in how they show up in the customers that we are looking to serve and we are hoping to in industries that we are looking to get into, and operating with a level of integrity in terms of you know their default, right, and being able to show up with a level of transparency and a level of a level of vulnerability about what they do know, how they're operating, what's influencing their decisions, that kind of information, that kind of thinking, that for me is important first. And then on top of that, how familiar are you with either the tools or the job to be done, right? But for me, it starts with that, building that culture, because you know it's there's one of the things that the sayings that I've heard, and many people have probably heard, is that it's not enough to say that we care. We need to show it, right? And the wordsmithing that we often do as both leaders, but even people within the industry, uh, is starting to run out, right? Yeah, I mean, it's never really been a thing that needed to be um, uh, used as the foundation when it comes to engaging with people, meaning that we should not only just be about our words, that we have to also be about our actions. But I think because of what some of the things that we are seeing happen with the technology, and specifically when it comes to guidance, because of how we are using the technology to support individuals in an area that they are very passionate about, that means a lot to them. This is their livelihood. That I need to have people working alongside me that are also considerate and caring about how our product is impacting these individuals. Because there's another saying, that I've heard that I don't fully agree with, and which is, um, achieving something by any means necessary, right?
mm,
That to me is problematic, because what that says to me is that if you fully believe that in order to reach a goal that you have to go there by any means necessary, that says to me that the guardrails that should be in place to make sure that there is care and consideration for end users, uh, that can fall by the wayside and that can degrade very easily, right? It may not necessarily be the case, but it is an indication, because if that is the foundation in which you stand on, then there are many ways in which you can achieve a goal that actually causes harm to people, right? Especially when
Yes.
it comes to a technology that's it's really not that smart. Like, I mean, it does great things, but it's only doing the things that the people who are training it to do does, right? Like, so if it's not being trained and then it's not being managed and stewarded in a way that is taking into account data integrity, when it's taking into account, you know, what the impact is on the well-being of a person, then there's a lot of rolling back that will have to be done. And I am not in the business of trying to cause harm to people where I also have to lose money trying to roll back and fix things that could have already been addressed at the onset. So it's a long way of basically saying when I'm looking for people, I'm looking for people who essentially have not um, gotten lost in this space of abandoning their humanity, but
Mm,
really looking to operate from that place and create some really great things for people leveraging the technology.
that I like that it kind of goes back full circle to what you've been talking about in general, and that idea that hey, we can use this technology to create good.
Yeah,
So, and since it since it's basically, as you said, like an extension of the people using the technology, it becomes like even more important that you surround yourself with folks who have that empathy and integrity. Like, do they understand like what the problems, like what the clients actually have? And then, you know, like, will they operate in a way that takes care of things correctly, right? Especially now, like when you think about it, like there's some government like oversight and stuff, but like it's really like industry based at this point where you have companies running their own committees for ethical AI use and stuff like that. So it's like, and that's a little bit scary when you think that like the big boys are the what, like the big corporations are the ones outlining what ethical use of AI is in the industry.
yeah,
Um,
mhm,
Especially when we've seen like what tracking does and some other things, you know what I mean?
yeah,
So it really does go back to hey, who's using the technology and who's putting what out there, right? And so like I appreciate the idea that everything goes back to the idea that like the AI enhances the you can use it to enhance the humanity
right,
of the product or the situation versus like it being like a replacement, right? For it, right? I
right,
guess there's like, that's happening in places. So it's like not to say that that's not going to happen or it's not happening, but
yeah,
it's like, hey, focus on trying to do it good, then we can, you know what I mean? Like how you're saying you want to see this as a standard in the industry, right?
yeah. And I'll just say this just to wrap because I know we're at time too, but just to really give some practical s- steps or practicality to what we're talking about. You know, it it's a shift in operating from a place of intentionality, right? And
Mhm.
so being intentional about for me designing for inclusion, that's just not representation but participation and making people part of the process. Like I said, I'm still working and having conversations with folk over at DOH, and I'm also having conversations with our small business owners while we are continuing to build our product, right? Um, Holding space for accountability is another one. So building feedback loops internally before we face them publicly. And I was speaking to that about rolling back any problems that happen, being intentional about that on the onset. And then lastly, redefining what it means to be successful when building out a product like this. And so measuring not only what we make, but how we are making it, right? What are
Mm,
our, AI principles that we are leading with and building upon.
thank you. Um, cool. No, thank you so much, Vincent, for coming on today. How folks can like connect with you and all that other stuff, LinkedIn or the site or find
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So it's a pleasure, first of all, to to be able to have the opportunity to have this conversation with you, Brody. So thank you for this opportunity. Um, and I think that what having these conversations are important. And I hope that your listening audience was able to take away something that's going to be helpful for them. If people want to reach out or connect with me, they could do so via LinkedIn. It is my name, Vincent Brathwaite, and they could, find me that way. If they want to connect with guidance, they can go to the website gidens.com. That's guidance.com. And then if they want to connect with us on Instagram, they could also go to guidance, GIDENS, on Instagram, and they will see us there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.